sales content to you? Is it more education, or persuasion, or is it both, and why?
Yeah, I honestly feel it's a mix of both, right? Because I do feel this is the point of education. You want to make sure that you have some very clear information in here. And I know we talked about it a little bit before, right? Because you have this different content that may be used across different types of stakeholders, different personas. So there is an educational component in there, but there's also the element of persuasion, right? And we talked a little bit about there are different types of content, definitely some where it may be the PDFs that are still very much needed, and other pieces that may be video and kind of interactive, build your own element. But I think altogether, it's about being able to make sure that you're educating your buyers, but also providing the what's in it for them, so that you're very clear in terms of what the value and the benefit is that you're looking to achieve with that content along with your communications. And just I think also the big piece is the way that the content is delivered. I would say that's the other big focus, right? When we think about just making it easier to consume, it's not only just the content that's being created, but also now how are we sharing and positioning this content, again, very digital first experience for them, so that they have everything that they need and can be educated and also understand that path that you're bringing them along.
Vanessa, when you're working with on a deal with a prospect, how do you do you adjust the types of content that you send based on the deal, based on the vibe that you're getting from the prospect? I mean, I imagine so much of sales is feel, right? Like trying to
Yeah.
understand the person. How do you tackle that? Do you yeah, how do you marry the content or the assets or the toolkits that you're using to the prospect?
Yeah, I mean, it's so much relationship driven, right? Like you said, it's you want to really understand and meet your buyers where they are in that journey, and understand that you're looking not to just share content for the sake of sharing content, but really take that prescriptive approach and understand, like, hey, based on our conversation, this came to mind. I thought of you. I think this would be relevant. Let me know what you think. So I think it's a matter of, yeah, maybe, there are some key call outs that you want to share with them. But as you continue those conversations over the, 3, 6, 12 months that you're working in that pre-sales process, you want to make sure that you're providing them that added value based on some of the feedback that you're gaining. I think that's a big piece of it.
Yeah, and I think that, the relationship over the course of time, that 3, 6, 12, it could be 12-month or longer sales cycle, depending on the industry. I think it's the quality of those interactions and experiences that they have with you and the brand that you're dealing with. So that comes into content, to your point. Content in person could be any kind of content. I think that all needs to be good to help, deliver that right perception that you're going for.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah. Matt, with the idea, like, so Vanessa talking about, content being more educational, I think sales playing more of a role of persuasion. Obviously, there's no clear-cut lines, but how do you think about that split between education and persuasion, and how does that influence how you approach the creative and the content creation with your team?
I think for us, this goes back to where what I was saying, like, we're consultants and we're also, visual communicators. Like those two things are really those are really two important ways of thinking about it. When we're showing something, it's like trying to provide value in what we're doing. So like value, like if that prospect is inherently getting value in what you're doing, then that is persuasive, right? That's making a compelling case for what you can do for them. And so we think through that again a lot, because there's a lot of heavy content. Sometimes we have to sort of navigate and think, how do we share this in a meaningful way? And so it's going through, like, consulting with them on hierarchy, like how do we display that, or how do we show it? Like, do we say it with words? Do we say it with some type of image or diagram or infographic or something like that? And in a way that I think is going to be resonate with people of all backgrounds. So like we participate on like the risk solutions, which is like usually like a lot of property and casualty is like one of our major areas, and then also what we call people solutions. These are like employee benefits. Often when you're talking to people solutions people, like you're talking employee benefits, you're dealing with HR executives, and they're not
Mhm.
necessarily like insurance savvy. So we got to think about what, like, how do we say things, how do we get rid of like the industry jargon and all of the acronyms that we use and make that in a really approachable way of communicating to where anybody can understand it so that anybody can see this and get the value that we're trying to offer.
Do you ever get, I think the danger is when you work at a company and you're selling your product or service or solution, you're very close to it. So then you get very familiar with what the jargon is and what the technical stuff is. So when you try to then dumb it down or simplify it, dumb it down is probably not the right word, but simplify it, um, maybe some people could be like, we're not speaking the right language, or like this should be easy to understand. Do you ever have to defend that decision to simplify? Like, how do you do that?
I like to kind of like I play a little dumb sometimes, because my background is I'm a 20 plus year creative as well, and I've worked in the agency world and I've worked in and tech and startups, and so this is my first stint in the insurance industry. So I kind of
Mhm.
come in and like I don't speak all of that language, and I'm learning it because it's interesting, but like that's sort of the sniff test I apply to it too. Like when we're working with our teams, and we have designers like that. There's not a lot of designers who just inherently started their careers in the insurance sector, right? Um, and so like we always say like, hey, how does this play to you? Does this make sense to you? I
Mm.
get, we have a little bit of a bias, or we know some of it because we work in this industry. But if we can, if I always say if you can make it make sense to me, then you're making it make sense to your client too. So because I'm not an insurance person.
I like that. Meredith, what about you on this subject of like what does content represent? Education, persuasion. How does that influence how you tackle it with your team?
Yeah, I actually, something Vanessa said about meeting people where they are, we take that same approach when it comes to the creation side as well. So, depending on where we anticipate someone would be receiving that content in their journey, thinking about what makes sense to them, what would connect with them is something that's more descriptive, going to make sense at this stage, and is something that's a little bit more concise or focus, the more laser focused on something specific, going to make sense at another stage. So really just thinking about like getting all of those insights and that feedback, that guidance from sales, the guidance from our SMEs, our experts, and letting that kind of guide our creation of really what is that proof, that why that's going to help support the sales process.